My parents secretly spent my college fund on my brother's new car and told me to take out loans. I always thought I had everything figured out. College was a given, the future was a clear path, and my parents assured me from the time I was young that I'd have all the resources I needed to make it. Every year they told me, "We're saving for your education. You're our priority." I trusted them. The moment my acceptance letter to my dream school arrived, I was on cloud nine. It felt like my entire life had been building up to this moment. I had worked hard, kept my grades up, and stayed out of trouble. Finally, it was time to cash in on all that effort, or so I thought. I sat down with my parents, excited to discuss the next steps. I assumed we'd start pulling from the college fund they'd promised me all these years. But when I asked about it, the mood shifted. My mom was fidgeting with her coffee mug, and my dad kept looking at his phone, avoiding eye contact. Then, after what felt like forever, my mom spoke up. We don't have as much saved as we thought. She paused like she was preparing to break bad news. Your brother needed a new car, and we used some of the money for that. I stared at her. My brother, who's barely kept a job for a few months, just got a brand new car, and my college fund, the one they swore was set aside for me, was used for his emergency. They explained that he needed it for work, and it would help him get ahead. I sat there numb. I had worked so hard to get into college, and now my parents were telling me that the money they promised me wasn't there. Instead of standing up for me, they prioritized my brother's convenience. The same brother who had been given everything and barely worked for it. I asked them what I was supposed to do now, and my dad casually said, "Well, you can always take out loans. Everyone does it." Loans. My parents, who promised me financial security, were now suggesting I sink into debt just to attend college. I could feel my stomach twist. This wasn't just disappointing, it was a betrayal. I was supposed to be the one they invested in, the one they set up for success. But now it felt like I was just an afterthought. I nodded silently, thanked them for the advice, and walked out. The walk back to my room felt like miles, and when I finally sat down, I realized I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't going to let my parents treat me like this. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, and I would fight for it, silently but fiercely. What do you think of this story so far? Would you have reacted the same way, or would you have handled it differently? Let me know your thoughts, and don't forget to follow for the next episode. Things are about to get interesting. I couldn't look at my parents the same way after that conversation. They thought I would just roll over, take out loans, and quietly follow the same path everyone else did. But they didn't know me as well as they thought. They assumed I was going to let this go, but I wasn't. I started to make a plan, quietly. I wasn't going to ask them for anything else, not even their help with figuring out how to get money for school. I wasn't going to play their game. First thing I did, I found out everything I could about scholarships and grants. I spent hours on my laptop looking up opportunities for someone like me, someone who didn't come from money but had the work ethic to prove she deserved to be there. I applied to everything, even the small ones. It didn't matter that they seemed insignificant. I knew every dollar counted now. Then I started looking for a part-time job. I found one in a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous and it wasn't going to pay for the entire tuition, but it gave me something to work toward. I didn't want to rely on loans. At least not unless I had no other choice. But I didn't tell my parents any of this. I didn't want them to know how hard I was working behind the scenes. If they thought I'd just be okay with their decision, they were in for a rude awakening. I didn't owe them an explanation. They'd already shown me they weren't going to help. And then there was my brother. He came to me a few weeks later asking if I could help him pay his car insurance. The same brother who didn't seem to give a damn about anyone but himself and who had gotten a brand new car at my expense. I stared at him for a moment. The anger I had been bottling up for weeks surged inside me, but I kept my cool. I looked at him and said, "I'm not your bank. I'm trying to figure out my own future and you're asking me to help with yours?" He didn't take it well. He tried to guilt trip me, said things like, "You're family. You should be helping each other out." But I was done. Done being the one who always gave. Done being the one who had to support everyone else while I was left to fend for myself. I told him, "You're old enough to handle your own stuff. I'm not going to keep cleaning up your messes." And with that, I shut the door on that conversation. Literally. I didn't even let him try to explain himself. Over the next few months, my savings slowly started to grow and my applications started getting responses. Some rejections, yes, but others were promising. I was accepted for a couple of small scholarships and grants. It wasn't the full ride I had imagined, but it was progress. Meanwhile, my parents didn't change. They kept up the act that everything was fine. They acted like nothing had happened, like I was still the good daughter they could rely on. They even called a few times asking if I needed any more help, but I kept telling them no. I had everything under control. It felt empowering, knowing I didn't need them. I didn't want their help. I didn't need their broken promises. And I sure as hell wasn't going to beg them for something they should have given me in the first place. But I knew they were starting to feel the strain. The gas bill came in, and I didn't cover it. The water bill went unpaid for a while, and they started calling me again saying things were getting tight, with just my mom working now. I didn't care. They made their choices. It was hard at first, shutting them out. But every day I grew stronger. I wasn't going to be trapped in their mess any longer. It had been a few months since I decided to stop playing the good daughter game. Things were different. I was different. different. I had my own apartment now, a tiny place, not much space, but enough for me. I worked 2 jobs and still managed to study. I didn't care about going to the family gatherings anymore. My parents didn't reach out as much, but they did send the occasional "How are you doing?" text as if everything was fine. But then one evening I got a call from my mom. "We need to talk," she said, her voice more desperate than usual. "Can you come over?" I didn't want to go. I'd already cut ties with them as best I could, but I could hear it in her voice. This wasn't just another conversation about the weather. Something had happened, so I went. When I walked into their house, it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place where everything had been broken and no one had bothered to clean up the mess. My mom was sitting at the table, her hands clasped together tightly. My dad was pacing, like he was trying to figure out what to say. "Your father lost his job," my mom finally said, her eyes not meeting mine. The words hit me harder than I expected. I had known their finances were tight, but I never imagined it would come to this. "Don't worry about it," my dad quickly added, trying to play it off. "We'll figure it out." But I could see the stress on their faces. I knew what was coming next. "We've fallen behind on some bills," my mom continued, "and, well, we need your help." The audacity of it hit me. Here they were, the same parents who had spent my college fund on my brother's new car, the same ones who kicked me out when it was convenient for them, asking me for help. I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. I sat there quietly for a moment, letting the silence hang between us. Then I said it. "You need to figure it out. I'm not going to bail you out." They looked at me like I was the one who'd betrayed them. My mom's eyes welled up. She started in on how family is supposed to help each other, how this wasn't supposed to happen. But I was done listening, done feeling guilty for their poor decisions. "You spent my future," I said, my voice steady. "I gave up my own plans for you, and this is how it ended. I'm not your backup anymore. I'm not going to be your safety net." I stood up to leave. "You wanted me to take out loans. Well, guess what? I'm paying them off myself. And I'm not here to save you from the consequences of your own actions." I didn't look back when I left. I didn't need to. I had already let go of the fantasy of them being the parents I thought I deserved. They didn't call me after that. Not once. It was strange at first, but then the weight lifted. I felt like I could finally breathe without worrying about them, about their expectations, about being the one to fix everything. And eventually I realized something. I didn't need them. I had built my own life and I didn't need to rely on anyone anymore. So, what do you think? Was cutting them off the right move, or would you have tried to help? Let me know your thoughts below. If you want to hear more, make sure to follow for the next story. My sister tried to sabotage my engagement by seducing my future husband. At first it was just small things. Little moments I could easily brush off if I wasn't paying attention. My sister Emma started to be around more. It wasn't unusual. She lived nearby and we were close. But then it wasn't just more. It was different. We had always been close until I got engaged. Things started shifting the second my fiancé Mark and I told the family. They were all happy for us, obviously. But it was Emma who seemed just a little too eager to be involved. I chalked it up to excitement. She was my only sibling after all. Of course, she wanted to help with wedding plans, pick out dresses, and tag along to every tasting. I didn't think anything of it at first, but then I started to notice how she would look at Mark. It wasn't just friendly, it was admiring. At family dinners, she'd ask him about his day more than she'd ask anyone else. She'd laugh too much at his jokes, even the stupid ones, and I'd catch her staring at him when she thought no one was looking, as if she were waiting for him to notice her too. The first real thing that caught my attention was one night when we were all sitting together watching TV. Mark made a comment about the weather, something casual and harmless. Emma turned to him, placed a hand on his arm, and said, "You always know how to make everything sound so charming." It was too much. At that moment, a knot twisted in my stomach. I excused myself and went into the kitchen, trying to shake the feeling. Maybe I was overthinking it, but the doubt stuck with me. The next few weeks were more of the same. She made a point to be around when Mark was, always finding some reason to engage him in conversation, always putting herself in his line of sight. I even caught her texting him one afternoon. Nothing overtly inappropriate, but enough that I felt uncomfortable. It wasn't just a friendly, sisterly relationship anymore. It felt like she was trying to get closer to him. I told myself to stop being paranoid. I trusted Mark. I trusted Emma. She was my sister. Why would I suspect her of anything? But then the invitations came. It was a Saturday afternoon and Mark and I were planning to have a quiet day at home. That's when Emma sent him a message, asking if he wanted to join her for a business dinner with some of her friends. She said it would be a casual thing, just a few people, and she was sure it would be fun. I wasn't sure what bothered me more, the fact that she invited him alone, or that she didn't even bother to invite me. But I wasn't going to overreact, right? So I smiled and waved it off. Mark seemed to think nothing of it either. He agreed, saying it would be good to catch up with Emma's friends. The night came and went. Mark came home late, later than I expected, and he looked tired. He brushed it off, saying it was a long conversation with her friends. I didn't push it. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe they were just hanging out. But deep down, I felt the first real crack. Something wasn't sitting right with me. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't shake the feeling that my sister wasn't acting like the person I knew. She wasn't acting like my sister. I wish I could say I was just being paranoid, that it was all in my head. But the more I ignored the signs, the more I couldn't shake the gut feeling that Emma had crossed a line. Something was off. off, and I wasn't about to let it slide. The turning point came a month later. We were at my parents' house for a Sunday dinner, a tradition we had always kept. Mark and I were sitting on the couch, talking about the wedding planning, when Emma casually walked by and placed her hand on his shoulder. Just a little too long, like it wasn't just a casual gesture. I caught the way she looked at him as she walked away, her eyes lingering. My heart sank. After dinner, Mark went outside to take a phone call, and Emma followed me to the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, a smirk playing on her lips. "You know, you've got a good one," she said casually, as though we were talking about anything other than my fiancé. I didn't reply right away, just stared at her, trying to stay calm. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tight. She shrugged, sipping her wine. "I just mean you're lucky. He's a great guy, smart, funny, nice. Doesn't hurt that he's easy on the eyes, right?" I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. She didn't stop there. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If I were you, I'd hold on tight. Guys like him are hard to come by." It was clear what she was implying, but I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I didn't know how to handle it. That night, I stayed up late, my mind racing. I had tried to convince myself I was overthinking things, but I couldn't ignore the fact that Emma was acting differently around Mark. She was crossing boundaries, testing the limits, and I was starting to see it for what it was. But still, I tried to push it out of my mind. Maybe she was just being friendly. Maybe I was too sensitive. I convinced myself it was nothing, but deep down, I knew it was something. A week later, Mark went out of town for a business trip, leaving me with nothing to distract me from the creeping thoughts. As I sat scrolling through my phone, I saw a notification. Emma had tagged me in a post on social media. Normally, I just glance at it, but something made me open it. It was a selfie of her and Mark at the dinner a few nights ago. They were sitting side by side, laughing, clearly enjoying each other's company. But what caught my eye wasn't the smile or the caption. It was the subtle hand on Mark's knee. I scrolled through the comments, people commenting how cute they looked together, how good they'd make as a couple. Emma had even liked the comment. That was when I snapped. I called her, my voice shaking with anger. "What the hell is this, Emma? Why are you posting pictures like this? Why are you touching him like that?" There was silence on the other end, and then a calm, almost too calm voice replied, "Relax, it's just a picture. We're friends. I'm just being friendly." I could feel my hands trembling as I gripped the phone tighter. "Friendly? You've been acting like you're more than that. Stop trying to make it seem like it's nothing. You're crossing a line." She didn't even apologize. Instead, she laughed it off. "Oh, come on, it's no big deal. Don't be so dramatic. He's just a guy, you know, and he's so easy to talk to. If anything, I was just trying to make him feel comfortable. You're so lucky to have him." I wasn't lucky. I wasn't lucky at all. I was furious. And when I hung up, I realized that there was no going back. The truth was out. I couldn't pretend I didn't see what was happening anymore. I wasn't going to let her steal my future from me. I wasn't going to stand by and watch her tear my life apart with subtle manipulations and fake kindness. I had to act. What do you think about Emma now? Do you think I'm being too harsh, or is she clearly crossing a line? Let me know what you think in the comments and follow for the next episode. Things are about to escalate big time. I couldn't just sit around anymore. I'd been ignoring it for months, letting Emma play her little games, convincing myself that it was nothing, just harmless flirtation. But after that phone call, after that post with her hand on Mark's knee, I knew I had to do something. The truth was, I was done being the woman who just waited for things to blow up. I wasn't going to let her destroy my engagement. So I started planning, quietly, carefully. The next time we saw each other, I decided I wasn't going to confront her face to face. No, this had to be done publicly. I needed her to feel the weight of what she was doing, and I needed everyone else to see it too. So I waited for the right moment. It came during a family gathering, a casual dinner at our parents' house. Mark, my parents, and Emma were all there. We were all talking, laughing, and eating. I could feel Emma's eyes on me, and it took everything I had to act normal, to keep my composure. Then I stood up. I didn't raise my voice, didn't yell or make a scene. But I knew what I was doing. I grabbed my phone from the table, pulled up the message thread between Emma and me, and started reading it aloud. "If I were you, I'd hold on tight. Guys like him are hard to come by." The room went silent. My parents exchanged looks. Mark, sitting across from me, raised his eyebrow. I didn't stop there. I scrolled through the photos she'd tagged me in, the ones where they were together at the dinner, the ones where she had her hand on his knee, and I read out the comments people had left on her post. "You guys would make such a cute couple. You're lucky to have him, girl. He's the perfect guy for you." Emma was pale by now. She was staring at the table, trying to pretend like nothing was happening, but the truth was out. I wasn't done. I turned to her and said, "I've been patient, Emma. I've tried to be understanding, but you've crossed the line. If you think for one second that I'm going to let you steal my fiancé, you're wrong." She tried to interrupt, but I cut her off. "Number, this isn't just a little mistake. This isn't just being friendly. This is you trying to destroy my relationship because you think you can have what I have." I could feel everyone's eyes on us. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was the truth laid bare in front of everyone. I didn't yell. I didn't storm off. I stayed calm, and in that calmness, I saw her start to crumble. She was speechless, caught in her own lies, and that was enough for me. I didn't need to drag it out. I didn't need to force her to admit what she did. She already knew the truth, and so did everyone else in that room. Mark stood up and walked walked over to me. He looked at me and I could see the shame in his eyes. It was the look of a man who knew he'd messed up but was too embarrassed to apologize in front of everyone. But I didn't need an apology from him. I needed him to understand that he wasn't the only one who had crossed a line. Emma had too, and she needed to know that I wasn't going to let her win. I turned to Emma one last time. You've lost me, and you've lost Mark too. This is over. You need to stay away. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out of the room, not looking back. Mark didn't follow me, and Emma didn't say a word.